to my kitchen for a new edition of Dessert Devotion. I can't wait to share with you a new dessert recipe and a new devotional. For the recipe, it was inspired by my recent unexpected trip to Dallas, Texas. I was traveling for reserve duty and had an unexpected and admittedly unwanted 36-hour layover in Dallas. So I decided to make the most of it, and I visited some of the city. I went to the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, an amazing experience, and I also went to the African American Museum. Well, while wandering around their gift shop, I came across a cookbook. The cookbook was called Jubilee by Toni Tipton-Martin, and it had all these great recipes. One of them was one for old-fashioned tea cakes. That definitely caught my eye. I remember hearing stories of my great-grandmother baking her famous tea cakes for her grandchildren, to include my mom. And she was also the first lady. My great-grandfather was a Baptist minister, and so she would bake the tea cakes for church events and dinners and fundraisers. So I couldn't wait to try this tea cake recipe for myself. I already have 5 cups of all-purpose flour in my bowl. And to that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and then I will add 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Now, when it comes to the nutmeg, some people like the kick or the spice of nutmeg, but you can also try different things, right? You can try cinnamon. I've seen tea cake recipes that use allspice or pumpkin spice, or you could use a liquid extract like lemon or almond as well. I'm just going to take my whisk now and stir these all together. Now I have in the bottom of my mixer already 1 stick of butter that I've softened at room temperature, and to that I'm going to add a cup of sugar. Then add 2 eggs, 1 at a time, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1/4 cup buttermilk. This would also be the place to add in, say, lemon extract or almond if you wanted to try those flavors for your tea cakes. Now we're ready to add in our dry ingredients, and this is going to form kind of a sticky dough that we're going to roll out to shape our tea cakes. So I've rolled out 2 sections of saran wrap on my cutting board here. And I'm going to divide the dough into 2 equal sections. And then I'm going to carefully wrap each part of dough. And we're going to put these in the refrigerator for at least an hour. That way they'll be stiff enough for us to roll out and to cut into cookies. All right, now that our dough is chilling in the fridge, let us take some time for our devotional. You know, this recipe calls for a pinch of nutmeg to add to the flavor of the tea cakes. And nutmeg always reminds me of a funny story growing up when I was learning how to bake with my mom. One Thanksgiving, I was helping her with sweet potato pies. Love sweet potato pies. As a matter of fact, if you have a recipe for sweet potato pie, put it in the comments because I would love to try it. But as we were baking the sweet potato pies and I was helping her mix them, I casually added the same amount in equal parts of cinnamon and nutmeg. That was not a good idea, right? Because the nutmeg is so strong. How strong was it? Well, my mom decided instead of throwing out the pie that we would just bake extra sweet potatoes and try to dilute the flavor of the nutmeg. We added so many sweet potatoes to this mix that we had enough filling for 8 sweet potato pies instead of 2. In the story that Jesus tells, the parable of the yeast, we find this in the Gospel of Matthew. In the 13th chapter, Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. Like nutmeg, yeast only takes a little bit, and it will go throughout the entire dough, and it lifts the entire dough. What starts out as a little ends in a lot. And Jesus said the kingdom of God is like that, right? We know the kingdom of God started breaking into our kingdom as Jesus as a little baby, but continues to grow, and it will continue to grow in an unstoppable way until Jesus returns. What does this parable mean for us? That like that small bit of nutmeg, like that little bit of yeast, that a little bit is unstoppable. That the kingdom may not seem like much now, but the power of the kingdom is unstoppable, and we will see the fruition of that kingdom when Jesus returns. We should keep a kingdom of God perspective when we are going through our struggles, when we are going through uncertain times, when we are grieving, when we are coping with loss and having some of those days that seem that they just won't end. Remember the parable of the yeast. Remember to keep that kingdom of God perspective, that what we're going through now is temporary, but the kingdom of God is coming and it is unstoppable. And one day, Jesus will return and make all things right, and we will dwell with him forever. Okay, finally our dough is ready. I do not like waiting for dough to stiffen up in the refrigerator. I usually try to find recipes that don't call for it, but this old-fashioned one is totally worth it. So look, you see that my surface is floured, my rolling pin is floured, even my hands are floured, and we're going to roll this out nice and thin, and then next we're just going to cut it into squares. Y'all, I'm just using a plain old beat up biscuit cutter that I have to cut my cookies out. And also remember, you gotta flour the cutter as well, right? So they come out nice and neat. And now I'm gonna bake these in the oven for just 8 minutes. As you can see right out of the oven, they don't puff up too much. They don't really brown, so definitely watch your time. Now I'm going to add a little turbinado sugar to it. Honestly, I should have done this before I put them in the oven because this sugar does not melt in the heat. But you know, I'm just going to add it to it while they're warm, and it will have somewhat the same effect. It just has a nice finishing touch to our tea cakes. Another thing you can do is to just roll out your dough and just bake that for 8 or 9 minutes. And then you can cut it into squares. I'm doing a few like this because this is the way that my great-grandmother used to serve her tea cakes. Either way, you'll have adorable tea cakes or tea cookies, and don't forget, a little goes a long way. Y'all, thanks for joining me. And don't forget to follow my Facebook page or subscribe to my YouTube channel for more dessert devotion.